This chapter will certainly be a case of, our guest or possibly guests don't necessarily fit the mold of the chapter real well. But as we look at the resources that we have available here in Havre, or for that matter in the state of Montana, we're a little bit limited, and so we got to kind of go with what we have and make the best of it. And I think that the thing about it, the one guest you guys will find extremely interesting. This is about obtaining and laying out operating facilities, which he has certainly done. The guy Bob Quinn, though, when he comes in, probably will end up getting off a lot on his entrepreneurship. He's a serial entrepreneur, meaning that he loves to come up with ideas, put those ideas to work, bring them to fruition, and then move on. He gets bored with that, and then he wants to move on to perhaps his next idea. And he's had a number of them through the years, and so no doubt we'll get distracted and end up talking a lot about that, as opposed to sticking to the main focus. And that's fine, believe me, because it's a very interesting person. He's got a book out. In fact, it's called Grain by Grain. It's interesting. A little video. I'll try to make sure I get a link to that video and send it out to you as well. What else was I going to say? He's some of the businesses that he started. He first started one. It was called, what the heck was it called? Montana Organic Grains, something to that effect. He started that because he grows organic grains. He would mill that grain himself and make it into flour, and then send it off. Not exported out of the country, but around the country. A lot of it went to California, if I remember right. He ultimately sold that business. It still exists in Fort Benton, to my knowledge. He ended up discovering a grain called kamut, which is an ancient grain. Okay, it's a type of wheat, but it's an ancient grain. He trademarked that, and so anytime if you're around, if you're looking through the grocery store, looking through some cereal and some of those things, you will see items that have that kamut name on them. Anything that has that name on it, he's actually still getting a piece of that product. Right, he's getting a few cents maybe on each one of those that sells. I was in Costco a while back, long time back actually, and there was a granola that was made with kamut, and it said kamut right on it. So I know that Bob gets a little bit of that. Then he took the kamut and made a product called Cracklin Kamut. Actually, I still have a little bit of that in my desk drawer, and that's a product that he manufactures, so he does make that. Okay, right there, it's made in Big Sandy. I believe it's packaged still in Big Sandy, and then gets distributed. And I think to this point, it's the distribution's not real wide, but we'll find out. I haven't talked to Bob for about that for a year anyhow, so we'll kind of find out. Maybe it's more widely distributed than I thought. He's working on some other projects right now, and I'll wait and let him kind of explain those as we go along. But I wanted to give you that background, so as we ask some questions, maybe we can kind of fit those in to what's going on here, right? Certainly, in fact, one of the businesses we probably need to talk about, because he's growing a lot of oil seed, safflower, I think, in particular, and he's converting that himself to oil. And what he's attempting to do is try to repurpose that. In other words, he is taking that and selling it renting it, I guess you could say, to like restaurants or food services at colleges. And then he'll go and pick up the used oil and bring it back and use that in his equipment as biofuel. And it's kind of an interesting, I don't know how far along he is in that endeavor. That's just kind of his newest one. But how do you set up? How did you set up those presses and those types of things to extract the oil? And how does that work? And on and on and on, I think would be fine. His locations have been primarily, he is a farmer southeast of Big Sandy, and I believe he does a lot of that. And so we can sure ask him some questions about that. Okay, and going back to when he developed the mills and whatnot for his grain, his organic grains. Okay, operating systems, things in here. Yeah, some of these will certainly. I think it'll be interesting to ask him even about the packaging, maybe for the Cracklin Kamut, for example, and also the development of the product and what that took. Okay, kind of some interesting background that he'll give us there. And again, I'll let him answer those questions, but those are questions that we ought to ask him. Inputs, where does it come from, right? The processes. That's kind of what we're talking about there. How does he get it out then to the I was talking about the Cracklin Kamut, and I don't know how widely distributed it is now. Good question to ask. And how does he get it distributed, right? How does he line up the retailers, the wholesalers, possibly, those types of things. And then operations or production, how did you set that up for each of those businesses? Basically, I think somebody else is running. I think he still maybe owns it, the Cracklin Kamut, but I think somebody else is running that. And then he's moved on to his next endeavor, but I'm sure he can tell us a lot still about the Cracklin Kamut. Why does he keep everything in Big Sandy? Why does he do that? And, has he had to build new facilities, et cetera, et cetera? What went into deciding the layout, et cetera? I don't think he builds too many whoppers. He'll talk a lot about food and how we the foods that we should eat instead of the ones we probably all eat. He probably wouldn't like my leftover Halloween candy. Anyhow, are these things factors? Capable, well-trained, stable workforce. Where do you get that out of Big Sandy? And maybe not. Transportation, isn't that a big deal? How about taxes and government regulation? Some of the other facilities like electricity, gas, those types of things. Yeah, those are great questions to ask him about it. Okay, he's obviously not in the city. Okay, I don't know. Generally speaking, when you get outside of towns, there's not a lot of zoning things, although there certainly would be with maybe some types of facilities. We could sure ask him about that, meaning that, if he's disposing of his used oil in some fashion, or maybe there's a byproduct of that even after he, when he brings it back and recycles it, he has to go through and clean it. And there's got to be some of the stuff left over from the cleaning that gets disposed of. And I don't know if he's got some issues with that, or if he's got some issues with the sewer and those types of things, because those are, even when you're out of town, some of those issues come up when you're dealing with the county. So again, who is he selling to? His is not a service company. None of them have been. But who's he selling to in terms of his oils, and maybe in terms of his Cracklin Kamut? Rating sheet for sites, sure, that's in the deal. Types of stores, yeah, this gets into stores, and he's not really retailing at all. His Cracklin Kamut would probably be considered a convenience good. We want to get into that. His oil, on the other hand, might be more of a shopping good, and mainly he's trying to make it into a strictly going to be like on a wholesale type of a thing, where he's not going to go. The end user is going to be more retail places, or, like I said, organizations like food service at a college or a hospital, perhaps, those types of things. I don't think any of his would be seasonal, but certainly his production seasonal when he gets into the production of the safflower oils and those types of things. Downtown location, obviously that's not going to fit in his case, but we see that with firms. Production, not so much production firms, but a lot of the retail types of places, right? They like to be in downtown areas. People still work down there and whatnot. Yeah, we're getting into, again, shopping centers. Those types of things aren't really going to be things that our guest here is going to talk about. We can kind of see what's going on in shopping centers around the country. They're basically closing up in a lot of cases, right? Manufacturing or production, he does actually do, manufacturing and does some production. And again, are there advantages or disadvantages? what are the advantages and disadvantages perhaps to being located where he is at, okay? And the facilities, what has he had to create or rent or modify in order to produce the things that he does? Good questions. Sure, these are good questions to ask. How did you determine how much space? How did you determine the best layout? How'd you implement it? I would guess a little bit of that seat of the pants, but Bob's got his PhD in biochemistry, so I don't know that he does a lot, that's seat of the pants. So I forgot to mention that in the introduction, but Bob's basically a farmer southeast of Big Sandy, but he also holds a doctorate degree in biochemistry, so he's not kind of your average farmer. Telecommuting, I don't know that he has people that work for him necessarily that would get involved in that. He might have some people in marketing or those types of things that are doing some of that, but maybe not. But I think it'd be a good time to ask about tech. We might also, if we get lucky, we might have Renelle Broughton come in. She has before. I'll try to get a hold of her and see if she will. But in any event, I think she works with some folks that don't live here but do a lot of her marketing, and they live in Utah or California or someplace. The types of layout, I think if we asked him if it was a product or a process layout, he probably wouldn't have a good answer for that necessarily. I would guess in his case, and it's quite a bit smaller than this, although, layout of the clean drum ink plant, his crackling kamut has to go through processes, obviously, from growing the grain to cleaning it, preparing it. They actually fry it in some of his oil probably that he produces. They flash fry it, I think, add the flavorings to it, package it, ship it out the door. I don't know that he would necessarily answer that. That's probably been a little bit more of a seat of the pants thing that he's done. And my guess is it's probably a 1 or 2 man operation for the size of it, but I may be wrong. Again, they may be distributing it far more widely than what I know. So how to improve operations, certainly a good question. Have you sat back and analyzed what's going on and tried to improve it? I think Bob's answer is going to be that's not what he likes to do. He wants to get it up and going and then move on to something else, develop something, come up with a new idea. So, but certainly these are things that he did when he started, right? He had to analyze these things. I know that some of this stuff will come up. Can the activity be performed in a better way? He did a lot of trial and error, I think, with creating the crackling kamut anyhow, and he's probably going through a lot of the trial and error stuff with the recycling or reusing the oil, and it'd be interesting to ask him those types of questions. So setting and using performance standards, I would guess, yeah. In his case, performance may be different than what we're looking at here, like coming back and reusing the oil. How well is that performing in your equipment? Are you seeing your equipment break down faster? You getting the same kind of horsepower, those types of things, right? Ooh, that was pretty quick, and that's good. So, in any event, yeah, Bob again is a very, very interesting person. We're pretty lucky to have him in our area. I'm going to try to send you out links to his both a video and his book. Maybe a video. I don't know if he has a website. We'll see. I'll take a look for that, I guess. But we should look forward to, and again, he's going to probably get into the entrepreneurial side of things, but I think you guys will really enjoy that. But we can certainly ask him questions about setting up his production facilities, those types of things. So thanks, and we will talk to you soon.